Vedanta Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Close the door. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatari Shatarine. Not yet. Not yet. Gotta wait till they move the chair. Tarine Nirvishe Shunyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasari Gaur Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhajare Hey Radha Govinda Gopala Hare Hey Bhajare Hey Radha Govinda Gopala Hare Hey, Radha Govinda. Hey, Radhe Govinda. Oh, Radhe Govinda. Radhe Gopala. Oh, Radhe Gopala. Vajare. Hey, Radha Govinda Gopala Hare. Hey, Vajare. Hey, Radha Govinda Gopala Hare. Hey, Radha Govinda. Radhe Govinda. Radhe Gopala. Radha Shamasunda. Oh, Radha Bankvihare. Oh, Radha Gopina. Radha Gokunanda. Radha Madhava. Radha Shamasunda. Oh, Radha Rama. Radha Mohan. Oh, Radha Damoda. Oh, Radha Giridhari. Radha Gopi. Radha Gopina. Kishore, Kishore. Radha Ramana. Oh, Radha Gopi. Radha. Radha Ajare. Hey, Radha Govinda Gopala Hare. Hey, Radha Govinda Gopala Bhajare. Hey, Radha Govinda Gopala Hare. Hey, Radha Govinda. Aishe Shri Bhagavan ko mere barambar pranam hai. Aishe Shri Bhagavan ko mere. Aishe Shri Gyana Shama ko mere barambar pranam hai. Aishe Shri Gyana Shama ko mere barambar pranam hai. Go Premanande! Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing with our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And right now we're taking up at chapter 6 of the 6th canto. This chapter is named The Progeny of the Daughters of Daksha. Text number 1. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, "My dear king, thereafter at the request of Lord Brahma, Brhaspati Daksha, who is known as Prachetasa, begot 60 daughters in the womb of his wife Asikni. All the daughters were very affectionate toward their father." Purport. After the incidents concerning the loss of his many sons, Daksha repented his misunderstanding with Narada Muni. Lord Brahma then saw Daksha and instructed him to beget children again. This time Daksha was very cautious to beget female children instead of male children, so that Narada Muni would not disturb them by urging them to accept the renounced order. Females are not meant for the renounced order of life. They should be faithful to their good husbands. For if a husband is competent for liberation, his wife will also achieve liberation with him. As stated in the Shastra, the results of a husband's pious activities are shared by his wife. Therefore, a woman's duty is to be very chaste and faithful to her husband. Then, without separate endeavor, she will share in all the profit the husband earns. Text 2. He gave 10 daughters in charity to Dharmaraj, Yamaraj, 13 to Kashyapa, verse 12, and then one more, 27 to the moon god, and 2 each to Angira, Krishashva, and Bhuta. The other 4 daughters were given to Kashyapa. Thus Kashyapa received 17 daughters in all. 3. Now please hear from me the names of all these daughters and their descendants who filled all the 3 worlds. The 10 daughters given to Yamaraj were named Bhanu, Lamba, Kukud, Yami, Vishwa, Sadhya, Marutvati, Vasu, Muhurta, and Sankalpa. Now hear the names of their sons. O king, a son named Deva Rishabha was born from the womb of Bhanu, and from him came a son named Indrasena. From the womb of Lamba came a son named Vidyota, who generated all the clouds. Text 6.
From the womb of Kakud came the son named Sankata, whose son was named Kikata. From Kikata came the demigods named Durga. From Yami came the son named Swarga, whose son was named Nandi. Text 7. The sons of Vishwa were the Vishwadevas, who had no progeny. From the womb of Sadhya came the Sadhyas, who had a son named Artasiddhi. Text 8. The 2 sons who took birth from the womb of Marutpati were Marutvan and Jayanta. Jayanta, who is an expansion of Lord Vasudeva, is known as Upendra. Text 9. The demigods named Maotikas took birth from the womb of Muhurta. These demigods deliver the results of actions to the living entities of their respective times. The son of Sankapa was known as Sankalpa, and from him lust was born. The sons of Vasu were known as the 8 Vasus. Just hear their names from me: Drona, Prana, Dhruva, Arka, Agni, Dosha, Vastu, and Vibhavasu. From Abhimati, the wife of the Vasu named Drona, were generated sons named Harsha, Shoka, Baya, and so on. Urjasvati, the wife of Prana, gave birth to 3 sons named Saha, Ayus, and Purojava. The wife of Dhruva was known as Dharani, and from her womb various cities took birth. Text 13. From the womb of Vasana, the wife of Arka, came many sons, headed by Tarsha. Dara, the wife of the Vasu named Agni, gave birth to many sons, headed by Dravanaksha. Text 14. From Kirtika, Dravanaksha? Dravanaka, I'm sorry. Whoa, good catch. That was a good catch. I mean, I'm rehearsing for these audiobooks, and I like to get it right, so thanks for that. You're so kind. Okay, text 14. Gosh, oh, gee whiz. From Kritika, another wife of Agni, came the son named Skanda, Kartikeya, whose sons were headed by Vishaka. From the womb of Sarvari, the wife of Vasu, named Dosha, came the son named Shishumara, who was an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 15. From Angirasi, the wife of the Vasu named Vastu, was born the great architect Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma became the husband of Akriti, from whom the Manu named Chakshusha was born. The sons of Manu were known as Vishwadevas and Sadhyas.
Usha, the wife of Vibhavasu, gave birth to 3 sons, Vyushta, Ruchisha, and Atapa. From Atapa came Panchayami, the span of day, who awakens all living entities to material activities. Sarupa, the wife of Bhuta, gave birth to the 10 million Rudras, of whom the 11 principal Rudras were Raivata, Aja, Bhava, Bhima, Vama, Ugra, Rishakapi, Ajay Kapat, Ahir Brahna, Bahurupa, and Mahan. Their associates, the ghosts and goblins, who are very fearful, were born of the other wife of Bhuta. Are you all getting all this? Okay. Purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that Bhuta had 2 wives. One of them, Sarupa, gave birth to the 11 Rudras, and the other wife gave birth to the associates of the Rudras known as the ghosts and hobgoblins. The Prajapati Angira had 2 wives, named Swada and Sati. The wife named Swada accepted all the Pitas as her sons, and Sati accepted the Ataravangirasa Veda as her son. Krishashva had 2 wives, named Archis and Dishana. In the wife named Archis, he begot Dhumaketu. And in Dishana, he begot 4 sons, named Vedashira, Devala, Vayuna, and Manu. Kashyapa, who was also named Tarksha, had 4 wives, Vinata, Suparna, Kadru, Patangi, and Yamini. Patangi gave birth to many kinds of birds, and Yamini gave birth to locusts. Vinata, Suparna, gave birth to Garuda, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, and to Anuru, or Aruna, the chariot driver of the sun god. Kadru gave birth to different varieties of serpents. Yes, sir? Here's your microphone.
Could you give some, explain a little bit about how it is that these personalities are giving birth to birds, locusts? How do we understand it? It seems very...
You want to pass that mic back because nobody can hear Maharaj except for me. You go right ahead and then I'll do mine right after you all.
Personalities are not ordinary personalities, and these things happen in different ways. They can happen in different ways. They can change their forms into whatever form they like, and if they have children when they're in that, having that form, the children become that form. That's one thing. They're all mystic yogis besides being Prajapatis. These are very high personalities.
You want to use that mic or? There's a lot of witnesses.
The whole world is my witness. No.
Why I oughta.
To the moon, Alice. One of these days, Alice. To the moon, Alice. That's all I know.
Thank you. Is that satisfactory for you?
It was mentioned before that one of these daughters
just
gave
that
birth
things are personified.
some cities.
Personified? Everything's personified. personified. Everything starts from a personal level. Which is hard to understand in an impersonal world. O Maharaj Parikshit, best of the Bharatas, the constellations named Kritika were all wives of the moon god. However, because Prajapati Daksha had cursed him to suffer from a disease causing gradual destruction, the moon god could not beget children in any of his wives. Purport, because the moon god was very much attached to Rohini, he neglected all his other wives. Therefore, seeing the bereavement of these daughters, Prajapati Daksha became angry and cursed him. 24th, 26th. What? You didn't get a purport? I'm sorry. Let me share mine with you. Purport. Because the moon god was very much attached to Rohini, he neglected all his other wives. Maybe it goes somewhere else. Thereafter, the king of the moon pacified Prajapati Daksha with courteous words and thus regained the portions of light he had lost during his disease. Nevertheless, he could not beget children. The moon loses his shining power during the dark fortnight, and in the bright fortnight it is manifest again. O King Parikshit, now please hear from me the names of Kashyapa's wives, from whose wombs the population of the entire universe has come. From whose wombs? Names of Kashyapa's wives. Other wives. From whose? Got it. Other wives. From whose wombs the population of the entire universe has come. They are the mothers of almost all the population of the entire universe, and their names are very auspicious to hear. They are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Krodha Vasha, Tamra, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. From the wombs of Timi, all the aquatics took birth, and from the womb of Sarama, the ferocious animals like the tigers and lions took birth. My dear King Parikshit, from the womb of Surabhi, the buffalo, cow, and other animals with cloven hooves took birth. From the womb of Tamra, the eagles, vultures, and other large birds of prey took birth. And from the womb of Muni, the angels took birth. The sons born of Krodhavasha were the serpents known as Dandashuka, as well as other serpents and the mosquitoes. All the various creepers and trees were born from the womb of Ila. The Rakshasas, bad spirits, were born from the womb of Surasa. The Gandharvas were born from the womb of Arishta, and animals whose hooves are not split, such as the horse, were born from the womb of Kashta. O king, from the womb of Danu came 61 sons, of whom these 18 were very important. Dvimurdha, Shambara, Arishta, Hayagriva, Vibhabasu, Ayomukha, Shanku, Shira, Swarbhanu, Kapila, Aruna, Puloma, Vrishaparva, Ekachakra, Anutapama, Dhumrakesh, Virupaksha, Viprachiti, and Durajai. The daughter of Swarbhanu, named Suprabha, was married by Namuchi. The daughter of Vrishaparva, named Sharmishta, was given to the powerful king Yayati, the son of Nahusha.
Text 33 through 36. Vaishvarana, the son of Danu, had 4 beautiful daughters named Upadanavi, Hayashira, Puloma, and Kalaka. Hiranyaksha married Upadanavi, and Kratu married Hayashira. Thereafter, at the request of Lord Brahma, Prajapati Kashyapa married Puloma and Kalaka, the other 2 daughters of Vaishvarana. From the wombs of these 2 wives of Kashyapa came 60,000 sons, headed by Nivatakavacha, Nivatakavacha, who were known as the Paulomas, and the Kalakeyas. They were physically very strong and expert in fighting, and their aim was to disturb the sacrifices performed by the great sages. My dear king, when your grandfather Arjuna went to the heavenly planets, he alone killed all these demons, and thus King Indra became extremely affectionate toward him. Text 37. In his wife Simika, Viprachiti begot 101 sons, of whom the eldest is Rahu, and the others are the 100 Ketus. All of them attained positions in the influential planets. Text 38 and 39. Now please hear me as I describe the descendants of Aditi in chronological order. In this dynasty, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, descended by his plenary expansion. The names of these sons of Aditi are as follows: Vibhaswan, Aryama, Pusha, Twashta, Savita, Bhaga, Data, Vidata, Varuna, Mitra, Shatru, and Urukrama. Text 40. Samgya, the wife of Vibhaswan, the sun god, gave birth to the Manu named Shadadeva. And the same fortunate wife also gave birth to the twins Yamaraj and the river Jamuna. Then, while wandering on the earth in the form of a mare, Samgya gave birth to the Ashwini Kumaras. Text 41. Oh. Really? Yep. Double bubble. Chaya, another wife of the sun god, begot two sons named Shanaishchaya and Savarni Manu, and one daughter, Tapati, who married Samvarana. 42. From the mood of Matrika, the wife of Aryama, were born many learned scholars. Among them, Lord Brahma created the human species, which are endowed with an aptitude for self-examination. Text 43. Got that? Pusha had no sons. When Lord Shiva was angry at Daksha, Pusha had laughed to Lord Shiva and shown his teeth. Therefore he lost his teeth and had to live by eating only ground flour. Text 44. Rachana, the daughter of the Daityas, became the wife of Prajapati Twashta. By his semen, he begot in her womb two very powerful sons named Sanivesha and Vishwarupa. 45. Although Vishwarupa was the son of the daughter of their elder eternal enemies, the demons, the demigods accepted him as their priest in accordance with the order of Brahma when they were abandoned by their spiritual master, Brhaspati, whom they had disrespected. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 6th canto, 6th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Progeny of the Daughters of Daksha. We don't clap so loud for that because it was all about having kids. I mean, what's going on here? It's every syllable, you know? God.
Do you all have any comments or reflections or questions? Yes, Navina Nirada Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I like the point that it's all personal and everything's coming from people.
Yeah.
So
Kids know that.
yeah,
When they draw pictures, they always put a face on everything. Like if they draw a house, they'll put a little smiling face. They put a city, sun, smile. Originally, I mean, everything comes from a person.
So that means all the life forms, all the even deities of personifications of cities and of other, it's all people.
It is.
And these are the original people which were instrumental to make those personalities appear. And it's quite interesting how it's all there in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
Like the secondary creation,
Yeah.
as far as what people are interested in, what they can.
The other thing is interesting is that as you go up in the universe, then the forms get more subtle, more subtle, more subtle, and more subtle. And in Satyaloka, it's like practically spiritual. You know, they have potencies and lifespans and things that we can't even imagine. Actually, we can't accommodate it and try to explain it from here, from this position. The only way you can understand it is to hear it submissively, without argument, and that's not an easy thing to do. When a materially conditioned soul like we are, especially in the West, with all this scientific knowledge and everything, hear these things, very hard for us just to accept without any argument, just to hear, completely submissively. But that's how you get it.
Other submissive inquiries? Yes.
My takeaway was don't upset Prajapati Daksha. It seems like...
Well, one thing is, according to Madhva's class, as soon as you start preaching, when you're going to upset somebody. I really appreciated his points, and it's unavoidable that when you take a stand, when you take some responsibility that I'm going to take a stand on some issue, then you're going to alienate people. Of course, you don't have to be obnoxious about it necessarily, but it definitely happens when you do that. And Narada Muni showed that he had to stand up to Daksha. I mean, it wasn't exactly that he stood up to him, he was feeling compassion for him. But he definitely went against what he knew would be Daksha's anger point, and he did it anyway because it was his duty and it was the right thing to do. And oftentimes, whether it's Daksha or anybody else, if you know what the right thing is and you have a duty to do it, you have to make your point. Of course, it's always best to refine your communication so you don't offend the person's sensibilities on a personal level, but points have to be made. And I see it happen all the time, especially in the expansion of a movement. There's a lot of different ideas about the way things should be. But those who are mature and in leadership will come together and they'll hash things out, sometimes with a little bit of verve. But at the end, they did their duty and they'll come to a collective decision and move on. And it's kind of important. So I just wanted to say that, it's not always that don't stand up to Daksha. You may have to stand up to Daksha at certain points, for certain reasons. But I understand your point that he's hot-headed and temperamental and stuff like that. But I just wanted to make the other side of the point.
The other point that Srila Prabhupada made that I think is interesting, and I was waiting to see if he was going to bring it up. If he would have, I wouldn't. But Prabhupada said the test of the effectiveness of our preaching can be determined by the polemic that it creates between the persons who are godly or believe in God and the people who don't believe in God. So he actually measured, sometimes he measured the effectiveness of our preaching based on the fact that it would actually make some people, upset.
Polemic comes from a Greek word which means to go to war.
Yeah,
right,
what is that?
I thought you knew Greek.
What is that saying?
Tikanas kala.
What is that saying? You can please some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you can never please all the people all the time.
Any other points? Going, gone. Okay, almost. Last point.
It is said that the consciousness, while begetting a child, determines soul attracted. So if they beget children like rakshasas and demons and reptiles, and does that mean?
I think it's a little different from that. Really, this creative period is a very unique time in the universe. It's they're doing their duty, actually, and we have a sense of this in the modern age because of our technologies. We reproduce so many forms and sounds mystically through using technology. It's on a gross level. It's using yantra. But back then, they were doing their duty just as an engineer would do nowadays, and recreate certain kinds of items that are necessary in a project. And so it's not that they had degraded consciousness, and therefore, of course, in the case of Aditi, that example is there, that she gave birth to Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaka because of that. But the wives of Daksha are part of a grand scheme, which is unfolding the way, what's his name, the great scholar who's a scientist who passed away? Sariputta. Prabhu was explaining it's like the codes are already there. They're already dialed in at the beginning of creation. It gets created again and again, constantly. I mean, it's constantly coming up again. And it's not that they have to start all over again. Everything's coded in, and then the people who are the conduits simply become facilitators for all these different forms of life to take birth. And some of them take birth asexually. They're just coming from the mind. They're manifesting from that subtle level to a gross level, and others are coming through sexual intercourse. And I think those are the whole category that comes from Daksha. But it's not that it's random or anything like that. These are codes that need to be enacted, and they're doing it as a duty, and they're bringing out these different forms of life that come out. 8,400,000 species. Of course, you can't hear anything without the mic. We might as well pass it back up again.
We've also heard already that all the souls, the subtle bodies of all the souls from the previous creation, are inside the body of Mahavishnu. And when they come out according to these codes that Vaisesika Prabhu was talking about, and they come back into the same place they were and started up where they left off the last time.
And then
so
Krishna enters their heart and reminds them what they wanted to do in their last life. Asau Gunamayir Bhavya Havi Prabhu.
And those codes are encoded within the Vedic hymns.
Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasraksa Sahasrabha.
Fascinating to hear how a particular Prajapati had 100 sons or 100 children in one womb, with one wife. Definitely cannot be the way we conceive it. And once you speak about the mind and so it would be fascinating to find out in the Vedas. There must be some way to explain this. I'm fascinated by the idea that you can actually create through the mind.
You know,
when the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra was born in a certain way, like she was pregnant, and Kunti was pregnant, and Kunti gave birth to Yudhishthira before she did, and she was very upset because the senior son becomes the next inheritor. So she banged on her stomach, and and what came out was 100 lumps of flesh, and each one of them, took the opportunity of a soul, and they made 100 sons. So there's all kinds of
what
ways.
to speak of the original 49ers, which were the Maruts.
Oh yeah.
And Indra cut the womb into little pieces, and then
The embryos.
the embryos into little pieces, and they all became 49ers.
But the thing is, they were supposed to be enemies, but because Diti misspoke one of the mantras, they become actually friends. So they said to him, why are you doing this to us? We're your friends. And then he cut him again, and that 7 became 49.
Just about, I mean, one thing that strikes me about all this creation of living entities through the womb and so forth, there's a section in the Bhagavatam where Prabhupada describes how a yogi who had mystic powers thought, why should children be born from the womb? So he made them be born from trees. And they're like little babies, wah, 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 you know, like hanging off the branches. And then when I read that, I was thinking, yeah, I just take it for granted babies are born from a womb. It's as arbitrary as any other thing. It's just that we take it for granted. That's how it works. But there's so many other different arrangements through which living entities can go through the process of incubation or whatever and then come out. We should get in touch with them and see if we can do a deal. That was some mystic yogi, and he said, I don't like the way babies are born from the womb. It's too much trouble. He came up with a new product, a baby tree. Wah, wah, wah. We're continuing. Where are we? Get out. Really? We clapped and everything, huh? Okay. Chapter 7. Indra offends his spiritual master, Brhaspati. Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami, O great sage, why did the spiritual master of the demigods, Brhaspati, reject the demigods who were his own disciples? What offense did the demigods commit against their spiritual master? Please describe this incident to me. Purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Saptame Guruna Tyaktair Devar Daitya Parajitai Vishvarupa Gurutvena Vrito Brahmo Padeshataha. This 7th chapter describes how Brhaspati was offended by the demigods, how he left them and the demigods were defeated, and how the demigods, following the instructions of Lord Brahma, accepted Vishwarup as the priest to perform their sacrifice. Text number 2 through 8. Talk about a daily double. Shukadeva Goswami said, O king, once upon a time, the king of heaven, Indra, being extremely proud because of his great opulence of the 3 worlds, transgressed the law of Vedic etiquette. Seated on his throne, he was surrounded by the Maruts, Vasus, Rudras, Adityas, Ribus, Vishwadevas, Sadyas, Ashvini Kumaras, Siddhas, Charanas, and Gandharvas, and by the great saintly persons. Also surrounding him were the Vidyadharas, Apsaras, Kinnaras, Patagas, birds, and Uragas, snakes. All of them were offering Indra their respects and services, and the Apsaras and Gandharvas were dancing and singing with very sweet musical instruments. Over Indra's head was a white umbrella, as effulgent as the full moon. Fanned by yak-tail whisks and served by all the paraphernalia of a great king, Indra was sitting with his wife, Shachi Devi, who occupied half the throne, when the great sage Brhaspati appeared in that assembly. Brhaspati, the best of the sages, was the spiritual master of Indra and the demigods, and was respected by the demigods and demons alike. Nevertheless, although Indra saw his spiritual master before him, he did not rise from his own seat or offer a seat to his spiritual master, nor did Indra offer him a respectful welcome. Indra did nothing to show him respect. Brhaspati knew everything that would happen in the future. Seeing Indra's transgression of etiquette, he completely understood that Indra was puffed up by his material opulence. Although able to curse Indra, he did not do so. Instead, he left the assembly and in silence returned to his home. Indra, the king of heaven, could immediately understand his mistake. Realizing he had disrespected his spiritual master, he condemned himself in the presence of all the members of the assembly. Alas, what a regrettable deed I have committed because of my lack of intelligence and my pride in my material opulences. I failed to show respect to my spiritual master when he entered this assembly, and thus I have insulted him. Although I am king of the demigods, who are situated in a mode of goodness, in the mode of goodness, I was proud of a little opulence and polluted by false ego. Under the circumstances, who in this world would accept such riches at the risk of falling down? Alas, I condemn my wealth and opulence. Purport: Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Na dhanam, na janam, na sundaring, kavitam, bhajagadishakamaye. O my Lord, I do not aspire for material opulence or wealth, nor do I want a great number of followers to accept me as their leader, nor do I want a very beautiful wife to please me. Mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhaktirahituki tvai. I do not even want liberation. All I want, life after life, is to be a faithful servant of your Lordship. According to the laws of nature, when one is extremely opulent, one becomes degraded. And this is true both individually and collectively. The demigods are situated in the mode of goodness, but sometimes even one who is situated in such an exalted position as King Indra, the king of all the demigods, falls down because of material opulence. We are now actually seeing this in America. The entire American nation has tried to advance in material opulence without striving to produce ideal human beings. The result is that Americans are now regretting the wholesale criminality of American society. This is prescient. Sixth canto, this is 1975 and a half. See what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? The result is that Americans are now regretting the wholesale criminality of American society and are wondering how America has become so lawless and unmanageable. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Nate vidu swarta katim hi vishnum, persons who are unenlightened do not know the aim of life, which is to return home back to Godhead. Therefore, both individually and collectively, they try to enjoy so-called material comforts, and they become addicted to wine and women. The men produced in such a society are less than fourth class. They are the unwanted population known as Varna Sankara. And as stated in Bhagavad Gita, an increase of Varna Sankara population creates a hellish society. This is the society in which Americans now find themselves. Fortunately, however, the Hare Krishna movement has come to America, and many fortunate young men and men are giving serious attention to this movement, which is creating ideal men of first-class character, men who completely refrain from meat-eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling. If the American people are serious about curbing the degraded criminal life of their nation, they must take to the Krishna consciousness movement and try to create the kind of human society advised in Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam gunakarma vibhagashaha. They must divide their society into first-class men, second-class men, third-class men, and fourth-class men. Since they are now creating only men who are less than fourth class, how can they avoid the dangers of a criminal society? Long, long ago, Lord Indra regretted his disrespect to his spiritual master, Brhaspati. Similarly, it is advised that the American people regret their mistaken advancement in civilization. They should take advice from the spiritual master, the representative of Krishna. If they do so, they will be happy, and theirs will be an ideal nation to lead the entire world. Point. Case in point.
I'd like to express my gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. This last time, before I came to India, we were on, I don't remember exactly where we were in the Bhagavatam, but we were reading the Bhagavatam every night in Houston, Texas, of all places. And all of a sudden, within, 3 weeks, at least 12 or more young men, and here's one of the examples, the proof of the pudding, sitting over there, Bhakta mat, and they heard straight the Bhagavatam. There was practically nothing else that they heard. They just heard the Bhagavatam straight, and they started coming every night, or every more than a few times a week. Yeah, there were 16 on the night that I left. And they were all responding the same way. We've had enough. And this is the real thing. There were 2 of them that came right out and said, Maharaj, this is the real thing, isn't it? And they're all just waiting for us to come back. He's in touch with them more than I am, isn't it? I mean, I'm talking about from 18-year-old girl right out of high school to one girl in junior college who, when she heard all this heavy stuff about women and this and that and the other thing, and she came up to, I don't remember who, after the reading. I went to my room and she said, yeah, I figured this out when I was about 18. So it's just an example of the potential that is there if we actually do this. And more people get out and read the Bhagavatam straight, in public, and give an opportunity. And we didn't do any advertisement, nothing. It was just Krishna in the heart just brought the ones in who were actually very receptive. So this is a big positive example what you're talking about. What Prabhupada's talking about. Be example. Hare Krishna. Text 13. Is it? Yes. If a person says, one who is situated on the exalted throne of a king should not stand up to show respect to another king or brahmana, it is to be understood that he does not know the superior religious principles. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this regard that when a president or king is sitting on his throne, he does not need to show respect to everyone who comes within his assembly, but he must show respect to superiors like the spiritual master, brahmanas, and Vaishnavas. There are many examples of how he should act. When Lord Krishna was sitting on his throne and Narada fortunately entered his assembly, even Lord Krishna immediately stood up with his officers and ministers to offer respectful obeisances to Narada. Narada knew that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Krishna knew that Narada was his devotee. But although Krishna is the Supreme Lord and Narada is the Lord's devotee, the Lord observed the religious etiquette. Since Narada was a brahmachari, a brahmana, and an exalted devotee, even Krishna, while acting as a king, offered his respectful obeisances unto Narada. Such is the conduct visible in the Vedic civilization, a civilization in which the people do not know how the representative of Narada and Krishna should be respected, how a society should be formed, and how one should advance in Krishna consciousness. A society concerned only with manufacturing new cars and new skyscrapers every year, and then breaking them to pieces and making new ones, may be technologically advanced, but it is not a human civilization. A human civilization is advanced when its people follow the Chaturvarnya system, the system of 4 orders of life. There must be ideal first-class men to act as advisors, second-class men to act as administrators, third-class men to produce food and protect cows, and fourth-class men who obey the 3 higher classes of society. One who does not follow the standard system of society should be considered a 5th-class man. A society without Vedic laws and regulations will not be very helpful to humanity. As stated in this verse, dharmam te na param vidu, such a society does not know the aim of life and the highest principle of religion. Text 14. Leaders who have fallen into ignorance and who mislead people by directing them to the path of destruction, as described in the previous verse, are in effect boarding a stone boat, and so too are those who blindly follow them. A stone boat would be unable to float and would sink in the water with its passengers. Similarly, those who mislead people go to hell, and their followers go with them. Purport. As stated in Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20-17, Nrideham Ajam Subalam Sidurlabam Plavam Sakalpam Guru Karnadaram. We, the conditioned souls, have fallen into the ocean of nations, but the human body fortunately provides us a good opportunity to cross the ocean because the human body is like a very good boat. When directed by a spiritual master, acting as the captain, the boat can very easily cross the ocean. Furthermore, the boat is helped to cross by favorable winds, which are the instructions of Vedic knowledge. If one does not take advantage of all these facilities to cross the ocean of nations, he is certainly committing suicide. One who boards a boat made of stone is doomed. To be elevated to the stage of perfection, humanity must first give up false leaders who present boats of stone. All of human society is in such a dangerous position that to be rescued, it must abide by the standard instructions of the Vedas. The cream of these instructions appears in the form of Bhagavad Gita. One should not take shelter of any other instructions, for Bhagavad Gita gives direct instructions on how to fulfill the aim of human life. Lord Sri Krishna therefore says, Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. Give up all other processes of religion and simply surrender to me. Even if one does not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his instructions are so exalted and beneficial for humanity that if one follows his instructions, one will be saved. Otherwise, one will be cheated by unauthorized meditation and gymnastic methods of yoga. Thus, one will board a boat of stone, which will sink and drown all its passengers. No, it's a comma. That means it's corrected. Unfortunately, although the American people are extremely eager to get out of materialistic chaos, they are sometimes found to patronize the makers of stone boats. That will not help them. They must take the proper boat offered by Krishna in the form of the Krishna consciousness movement. Then they will be easily saved. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Ashmamayak plavo yesham te yata majatam plavam anubhajanti tateti rajanit yupadreshtishu swasabhyeshu kopabhyanjitaha. Kopo vyanjitaha. Kopo Kuvana. If society is guided by political diplomacy, with one nation maneuvering against another, it will certainly sink like a stone boat. Political maneuvering and diplomacy will not save human society. People must take to Krishna consciousness to understand the aim of life, to understand God, and to fulfill the human mission.
One small comment. Just that it strikes me oftentimes how Prabhupada turned his merciful glance towards America. Because America, the timing and the way the people were is the frontier leading the whole world in materialism and so forth. But Prabhupada gives a lot of mercy here. He's directing all this towards Americans.
Yeah.
And so people who happen to have been born in America got a lot of special mercy from Prabhupada's glance. And he put a lot of his blessings into that whole, of course, the whole world, but that's where he started. His heart was there.
Just really quick, I was noting that Prabhupada says, political maneuvering and diplomacy will not save human society. People have to take to Krishna consciousness. And that earlier, I think, a fifth canto, that the degraded condition of laments and therefore dedicates himself more and more to the Krishna consciousness movement and spreading it. So it's really like a very clear instruction not to get into politics and wrangling and all these things that capture the mind, and the news cycle kind of is meant to try and get us to be distracted by. Prabhupada said, no, if you care about how the world is going to hell, then you spread Krishna consciousness.
And I would, I'm sorry, no, you beat me. You beat me to it. No, it was a no. It was a no. What is that? What is that kind of nose by the nose? No. Photographic. What's the saying? When the raisin is right. Photo finish. It was a photo finish. But you beat me. I saw it with my own eyes. I forgot what I say also, so that must not have been very important.
Anybody else?
It's more like a question. Is that okay or no?
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's very much okay. I encourage questions and lots of discussion. More discussion.
So it's like nowadays, it seems that people are less attracted to, or some devotees are saying that we should present the Krishna consciousness in a non-sectarian way, that it doesn't appear sectarian. Yet we find in this purpose, Prabhupada is really kind of ruling out anything else apart from Krishna consciousness as an effective means of perfecting our lives. And anyone who reads this will, obviously we know it's non-sectarian, but it appears to be that this is the only way. So I'm just wondering what is the validity, or what is the balance of how we present Krishna consciousness in a non-sectarian. Should we do like that or should we not? Is the question clear? I don't know if I made it too. Yeah.
What do you mean by sectarian, sir?
He knows the art. This is the master asker, right here. The master asker. Sorry.
Meaning like a group of people who are right and everybody else has got it wrong, and like the principles of Krishna consciousness are universal. Once we embrace Krishna consciousness, we know it, and it's applicable in any situation. But when we first read about it, it seems that you have to give up who you are and give up your family and give up your personality, everything, to join a cult, the Lord Chaitanya's cult. I'm using the word cult in a good sense, not in a bad sense.
Yeah, people who follow a culture, a certain culture.
We don't find that. We find that, at least in America, that people respond well when we present Krishna consciousness in an inclusive way, in a way that's encouraging, that bridges the gaps that may already be there in their minds. Preachers, those who teach Krishna consciousness, have to anticipate what the possible traps might be in people's minds, where they might be waylaid thinking one thing or another. For instance, oftentimes people in America, having an independent spirit, say that I'm not interested in organized religion. This is a common thing.
Don't worry about
that.
So
what they're trying to say is they don't like sectarianism, they don't like dogma. So if somebody knows ahead of time what they mean by that, they live in that particular culture and they understand that, then they can present in such a way that people can take to Krishna consciousness. In Italy, Trados, when he goes around door to door, he presents it. He said, this teaches you how to be able to overcome anger and not become angry. Because apparently they're hot-blooded or something like that. They get angry a lot and they go, ooh, this is amazing to be able to take that. So Prabhupada talks about how realization means to be able to represent what the Acharya has said without screwing out a new meaning and without trying to surpass the previous Acharya, but doing it in a way that is in language that people can appreciate. It's accommodating. That's really mercy, to be able to do that.
Realization. That's realization.
It's realization.
That's his definition of realization.
It's Prabhupada's definition of
Bhagavatam
realization.
1:4:1 purport.
Besides the strict dictionary meaning of sect, people nowadays use it mostly as meaning something which is not universal. So sectarian means not universal, means it does not apply to everybody. So it applies to a group of small people who want to...
Small group of people.
Yeah, small group of...
Huh?
So if we manage to show that what we preach is universal, applies to everybody, then we do a good job. Otherwise, sometimes people get the wrong impression that what we present is not applicable to their particular situation, and this is our lack of brains to present in the appropriate way according to their time, place, situation, stuff.
It's interesting because in America right now, the polls show that people are less, especially after this whole thing that just happened with the Catholic Church, with all this expose of the pedophiles and abuse and all that. They say we're not interested in organized. They say, but we want to be spiritual. So it's the key. It's a key word in America. If you talk about being spiritual, it wakes people. I mean, people are not. They don't want. It's not that they don't want to be spiritual. It's not that they want to. They don't want to. They want it, but they just they're losing faith in the what how do you call it? The orthodox, mainstream, organized religion. Yeah.
So, Bhakti Matt, do young people today like this idea of organized sectarian religion?
Kind of, but I don't think so. People don't like organized religion, but people don't like groups that feel that they have a monopoly on God. So I feel Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada always says if you're a Christian, practice being a Christian and you'll go to Godhead. But most people don't practice being Christians. They eat meat and they do all kinds, they have illicit sex, they do all kinds of things. So Krishna allows people access God in a way that's non-sectarian.
Does that satisfy you?
It does. Just one little thing, because Prabhupada continuously, for example, in his purport, uses words. Prabhupada, I'm satisfied with the comments very much, but just for my final understanding, that Prabhupada often in the purpose he uses the term the Krishna consciousness movement, and it's repeatedly. And sometimes when we are present this, even if I'm reading this purport to a new person, you may feel a bit like.
Here, I got.
Srila Prabhupada.
No, you're first. You're first.
Srila Prabhupada invited all the religious people of the world to join him in this mission of spreading God consciousness. So I think it's inclusive how Prabhupada means the Krishna consciousness movement. I don't think he limits it to the physical or geographical location of ISKCON and its centers, but people who are joining hands in this great cause of spreading God consciousness.
Well, we just heard it just a few ports ago about. Okay.
I really appreciate your point. And Prabhupada went out of his way to include scholars and scientists, philosophers, and religionists. And at the same time, when he'd meet with them, he didn't allow them to cheat. For instance, there's a famous discussion between Prabhupada and a famous yogi of the time. I won't mention his name. But in the conversation, Prabhupada was relentless on insisting that he be very clear about who God is. Because the person was being evasive when it came to saying, you could worship anything, anyone, anytime, like who is God? And he would say, well, it's a big secret. And Prabhupada said, no, it's not. It's right there in the Bhagavad Gita. Do you accept or not accept? And if you don't accept, then tell us who your form of God is. So he was inclusive, but philosophically he was extremely precise, because he saw that as the Acharya, it was extremely important for the world to set the standard that you can't just say anything in the name of religion. You actually have to have a science behind it in order to help the people of the world, and that's what he was concerned with.
Excuse me.
Good.
I'm not good, but I'm trying. The point I would make on this point is that it's not ever, one way or another, black and white. It's not like that. But, we have, Prabhupada said the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is the beginning, and we should have mass chanting all over the world. And this is going to increase the piety of those people who do chant and hear the chanting. But I've been finding over the last 5 years, since I've been doing this reading every day seriously with the vow, and everybody who's coming around to hear in that way, I'm finding that if I invest my energy in those who are actually responding positively, and not necessarily putting my energy, in the other thing that needs to be done, must be done, for the masses of people must be done. But some of us have to start to invest our energy on those who are responding and with intelligence, and then we will get the thing that we want. Young people who are committed. I got one example here, and who can become potential leaders of this movement when we leave. And I think this is extremely important. And so we should devise methods of filtering the persons who do kind of wake up, and people are going to wake up at different levels, at different times, in different ways, in different speeds. And we have to, some of us have to be there to bring those people, and we should have, in all of our temples and centers and wherever we're preaching, a way of bringing those people in to those of us who are perhaps a little more mature or, dedicated to that style and that way of preaching. And we should do this. We really need to do this. It's super important. I was thinking.
Through the years, we have had challenges when people hear Sarva Dharma Parijaya and the translation, we have it as religion. You have to give up all religion. And when somebody asks you, do I have to live my religion? You say, no, you don't have to, but it is written here in the book that you have to give up all religion. Why do we have to explain ourselves instead of saying the right thing from the book?
Well, not only do I don't mind, I insist.
Because that's our job, to explain it. That's what parampara means. I mean, there's never a time in which we're given the message, or bequeath the message, and that we don't have to also turn around and explain it. There are multiple cultures, and then the eras that we enter into are different. The way we explain it, the way we explained it back in the 60s is different, or 70s, I can say for myself, is different from the way we present now. And I remember a marked difference in the 80s. My point is that it's never going to be handed to us in a way that we don't have to do our part to write what things mean, and also explain what they mean and unpack them and things like that. I mean, that's our service, to represent it like that.
I completely agree with that, and I just wanted to say that as someone who still remembers, coming to Krishna consciousness from to me, we're able to and willing to show how it's internally consistent and externally consistent, which means that whatever's being said in the books, Guru and Sadhu, can be reconciled within the tradition properly without becoming inconsistent. means the person actually knew Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra very well. It means they could show how what it's saying applies to what we can see with our own senses and logic, and whatever other processes we have about the external world, and they can present it in that way. So it ceases to be like a self-contained kind of belief system. It's actually internally consistent, means that it actually makes sense within its own world, and then externally consistent means it actually, whatever is being said in there applies to reality. And that's what science is. Those are two of the main things that constitute a scientific endeavor. Is it actually makes sense within itself, and does it apply to the world you're claiming to observe? That's pretty much what you're saying.
Thank you.
When we present the books, sometimes people come up with this point. So, do I have to give up my religion? And what I tell them is that they believe in and functions and impressing people. It's the heart of it. It's the essence. And that's what Krishna is telling, that all these dharmas are external, but you have to come to the higher level of Sanatana Dharma. People agree to that. They're in with that.
Oftentimes when people ask me, say, is this organized religion? And then they say, is this some religion? You know, they have that mood as soon as you show them that says, is this religion? So what they actually mean is this, so I answer and I say, no, this completely rejects all religious activities that are materially motivated. And it propounds the highest truth, which is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. No, because it's like, is this religion? No, this completely rejects all religious principles that are materially motivated. Because that's what they're thinking. And the Bhagavatam answers them precisely, exactly what they wanted to hear. And they go, wow, this is what I've been waiting for.
You open up the page and you just read that to them and they go, whoa. Do. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Did we finish
another
this purport?
Another point is we have to connect that verse, which is, the ultimate, the conclusion, to all the other verses, and explain it the way Prabhupada explains it all the way through the book. He's appealing to the Kshatriya anger and pride at one point. If you don't do this, then you're just going to get, people are going to badmouth you. They're going to call you a coward, and what's going to be more painful for you than that? Then the Ashtanga yoga system, control the senses, do this, and all these things fit into some way the different religious processes around the world. But ultimately, as Naveen said, it's one. Religion is one, and all these are coming from the same place. You accept there's one God, and that's what Sarvadharma and Prijana means. You accept there's one God and act to his instructions and the principles. People will accept it.
And that brings us to the cow break. We'll see you all back here at 20 minutes after. Gaur Premanande Haribol.